welcome back for another episode of Chasing Ghosts. This is the video series where I talk about those hard to find, those impossible to find, comics that you really got to get lucky in coming across. These aren't books you're going to see up on the wall at your LCS when you go in there every week. These are some hard to find books. You're going to have to do some research, some legwork, do some digging, and like I said, get lucky in a lot of cases in stumbling across one, or pay a hefty premium if you really want to obtain it. Hopefully you're enjoying this series as well as everything else here on the channel. Please let me know what you think in the comments down below. Make sure that you like, you subscribe, you hit the alert button so you don't miss anything. Keep telling your friends so we can keep growing this channel. And I know it's been a little while since I've done one of these. I'm going to try to rotate these in maybe once a month thereabouts and kind of play with my schedule a little bit now that I'm trying to add the spoiler review show with Dollar Bin Digging and then keep up every other show that you guys already enjoy. So keep an eye on the channel as more things are coming your way. But if you want to see the books I have for you this week, just hang out for a few seconds after the short intro, and I will be right back. All right, so for this week, I actually do have a little bit of a running theme planned for this episode, given that we have gotten new leaks, new images, trailers, etc. for some upcoming Marvel films. One of those characters heavily featured in some of those previews and leaks was the Red Hulk. So I figured, you know what? Let's do a Red Hulk episode. So, buckle up, get ready, and let's get this thing started with our first book and see what we have here. All right. Get it loose. Our first book is a very high ratio incentive. I'm talking really high ratio. Normally we're dealing 1 in 50s, 1 in 100s. This is even higher than that. This is a 1 in 200. This is Hulk number 14. This is a fun. I love this cover with the the mirror reflecting the object closer than they appear. You got Deadpool. It's a bit humorous. Fun take on just an angle you just don't see, a perspective you don't see on covers very often. This is an Ed McGuinness cover. This was from August of 2009. And as I was saying, this is a high ratio incentive. This was a 1 in 200. So shops had to order 200 copies to be eligible to order one. Now, these are estimated print run numbers that I got from Comicron. It's not set in stone. It's not official. It's the best guess that we have. So don't take this as gospel. This is just what we have to work with to give us a sense of what could be out there. So we have an estimated print run of 77,373. If this book is 1 out of every 200, that math would break out to be 386 copies of the incentive. That's not exactly how it works or how they're printed. But again, this is a gauge. This is a framework to give you sense of how many copies of this book may be out there. So again, don't take this as set in stone. This are just estimated numbers to give us an idea of what we're working with here. Now, what we do have set in stone, at least for now, is what we have in the census. So in the CGC census right now for this book, there are a healthy 154 copies. So we have just under 400 copies, 154 graded. That seems like that math might actually seem to work, considering this is a high ratio incentive. A lot of places and a lot of people would have gotten a book like this graded over the last few years. That said, there's 24 9/8s, 49 6s, 39 4s, 24 9/2s, 13 9/0s. You got 11 8/5s, 10 8/0s. You get my point of why I kept reading these down. Normally I stop after 9/6 is because people graded everything. Any grade, any copy was sent in. Look, there's even a 7.5. There's even a 6.0 in there. So my point is, a book like this, they sent in basically any copy they had. That's the point. That said, what's actually sold in the last 3 months on this book? Well, for this book, there actually were a few sales. Here are a few examples of what we're working with. We have one of those 9.4 sold for $275 at the end of October. Earlier in October, there was a a signed copy by Stan Lee and Ed McGuinness for $500. What grade is that? Oh, 9.6. Not terrible. And then there was a 9.8 that actually sold at the end of September for $720. Very expensive book. High ratio incentive. Cool cover. 2 characters that are kind of in demand at all times. it makes sense that the prices would be there. But with that said, are there any available for you? And that's what we gauge is this a ghost or not? If there's one or less, we'll call it a ghost. If there's two or more available, we'll just say it's hard to find. In this particular case, I believe there was maybe 4 or 5. I only have 3 examples here. So we know what this one's going to end up being. With that, $350 raw. There's a 9.6 looking for $550. There's an 8.0 looking for $300. It's still not cheap. It's still an expensive book, however you look at it, well above that ratio mark. So with that said, and with these multiple copies, it's not a ghost, so Pac-Man's going to eat this one up. If you want it, there are copies out there for you to have. So that's the call on this one. This is not the only 1 in 200 during this run. But before we get to the next one, I want to remind each and every one of you out there who hasn't tried Whatnot yet, now is your chance. Use the link provided below. Sign up. You get a free $15 to spend on whatever you want with whomever you want. No strings attached. $15 just to try it out. What do you got to lose? You help out the channel. You get yourself something nice. Now, with that said, let's take it to our next book and see what we have next for you. And Pinky here, I think, is bringing in that other 1 in 200 that I was referencing. And this one is another Ed McGuinness cover. This is another fun Deadpool with the Red Hulk cover, as Red Hulk is taking Deadpool's gear and kind of stretched it out a bit. So fun cover, a little bit of humor there. Makes sense. And a really huge looking Red Hulk. With that said, Ed McGuinness, this is October of 2009, so just a couple of months later. And this is another 1 in 200, but the print run on this book was a bit lower than the last. So the estimated print is about 56,777, making the estimated incentive 283 copies. Again, estimates, don't take this as a set in stone. I've explained it over and over again, but just to give you an idea of what we're talking about here. Now, with that said, of those potential 283 copies or more, there are a decent number in the census for this one too. As when we go over to CGC, there are actually 210 copies. 210 in the census for this book, with 63 9/8s, 81 9/6s, 49 4s, 12 9/2s, 5 9/0s, etc., etc. Once again, this is another book that people have sent in to get any of them graded, as we've got a 5.5, there's 7.0, there's a pair of 7.5s. Mostly with modern, people only send in those 9.8, 9.6 candidates. If it looks like it's lower than that, they don't bother sending them in to get graded. But a book like this, they sent in anything they had. Once again, with that said, I only found one actual sale the last 3 months on this book, and it was a CBCS signature series signed by Rob Liefeld, well, I guess because of the Deadpool angle, that took a best offer on $2,000. So very expensive, but I don't know how much of that was due to the signature, how much of that was due to the incentive of this book, like how hard this is to come by. But with that said, if you wanted to buy one today and you went to eBay to do your search, well, you're in luck. Oh, sorry, accidentally went back somehow. You're in luck, as you can still get this with a few copies available. Here are 3 examples. Looking for a 9.8, asking $1,500. A 9.6, also signed by Liefeld, looking for $1,500. And then there's a raw that's looking for $2,300. Just a few examples, but there are a handful of these out there if you were so inclined. So with that availability, we're not going to be able to call this one a ghost dice. So no dice on this one. Still hard to find. Still very expensive, but not a ghost by our standards. So with that, we will close the book for now. Again, this is a moment in time. This is as of November 12th, 2024. We do this in another 6 months, the market could be completely different, and there is nothing out there. Who knows? So as far as this snapshot goes, this is the status of this book. So with that said, let's move on to our next option here. All right. As far as our next option goes, we're still sticking, like I said, with Red Hulk, but we're going to look further down the line. Further down the line in the run, we are going with Hulk number 50, anniversary issue. And with that anniversary issue, we actually got a couple of covers on this one. I'm going to do them both in this slot. But first up, we will start here with the Art Adams. April 2012 is when this came out. This is a pretty fun Art Adams cover. I dig it. I like it. I like Art Adams, so I'm a little bit biased. This is a 1 in 50 incentive with a print run of about 34,000. That would make this 1 in 50 estimated at just about 688. So under 700 copies. estimates. But it could be a good ballpark number for this book. But with that said, not many graded by comparison of those 1 in 200. So not everybody is sending every copy they have of this in to get graded. Or maybe that 688 number isn't right either. And there's less copies than we think. Point being, in the census for this book, there are only 14. So with that, out of that 14, we have 8 9/8s, 4 9/6s, and a pair of 9/4s, and that's it. That's all we got in the census. So how tough is this book? Well, it's tough enough that I couldn't find any sales the last 3 months when I went looking, recently. So no gauge on what the market would pay for this right now. And if you wanted to get one, well, guess what? I couldn't find any available either. So this is one that's just not out there right now. Again, it's not to say that this is impossible to find. Just right now, it seems to be pretty difficult, as I couldn't find any options listed or handy at the moment. So with that, you know where this one's going to go. We'll run this one off later, as it's not able to be grabbed on the, very easily. Like, this is going to be something you're going to have to do some work to go and track one down. Now, with that said, this was the 1 in 50, and I mentioned there is another version of this book that's an even higher ratio incentive. So let's look at this cover here, which is the Humberto Ramos cover. It's still going to be under the same option because it's still the same book. This is still Hulk 50, but this is I'm sorry, this should be Humberto Ramos. I'm sorry, I didn't change the name tag there, but this is a 1 in 75. Same estimated print run, but since it's a 1 in 75, there may only be about 500 of these, as opposed to 700 of these when you do that ratio math. Again, it's not an exact science. It's not an exact number. It's a ballpark guess. But much like the 1 in 50, when you look in the census, there are not that many graded. So surprisingly, out of this, there are only 8. 8 submitted. Now, out of those 8, we have 6 9/8s, 1 9/2, and 1 9/0. So how tough is this one? I did find a sale. I did find a sale on the 1 in 75, and it sold for only $50 or best offer. I didn't even go digging to see if they accepted a best offer, which is a good chance that they did. And they actually made an offer that was less than $50. And this was back in September for this book. So just because it could be very, very difficult to find doesn't mean it's automatically going to be expensive, or doesn't mean that not everyone knows what this book might actually be or care all that much. I don't know. It depends. It depends on the market, the buyer, and the seller. In this case, I think the buyer got a good deal here based on the fact that they got it for under ratio, and it's a very difficult book to find because when I went searching for more copies, I couldn't find any. So if I wanted this book, I couldn't get it right now, at least not through eBay. And so for $50, well, if I had an extra $50 lying around, that might not be a bad buy. I don't know. It's a pretty cool cover with the Ramos. I kind of lean towards the Art Adams a little bit more. I know it's a little bit gorilla-like, but I kind of dig that kind of angle with Hulk or a Red Hulk. Just kind of makes sense. But considering none out there right now, same story. Same story as the 1 in 50 for this one. So we'll put this one aside for later. Now, that's our Humberto Ramos, and I believe we'll have one more to get to. But before we get to that one, if you're in the need to go and restock on all your supplies, you got to go buy your bags, your boards, your boxes, your top loaders, whatever you need. If you're going to go over to BCW, use my link down below. Use my code RENA10, regardless, to get yourselves 10% off. Because you got to buy this stuff anyway. You might as well save some money while you do it. So unless you got a better code to use this code and get 10% off of your whole order and save yourself a few bucks, because why not save when you can, right? With that said, let's see what Clyde has for us in our last box. All right, so 4 ghosts. As you know, we're doing kind of 4 slots. That's the kind of angle I'm going with the show these days. But Clyde's bringing us our last option, and this is another case where I'm going to give you 2 books because we got 2 covers for it. But first things first, we are going to be looking at Thunderbolts Now. Could be difficult to look this one up because of the all-new Marvel Now, and sometimes they put Now after the title and after the number, and by all accounts, to search this one, they want that Now in there. So, Thunderbolts 20 Now. This book came out a while ago. This is a Phil Noto, January 2014, so about a decade now, about a decade in. This is a 1 in 50 incentive with an estimated print run of just under 29,000, so you do that math, we're looking at maybe 580 copies thereabouts. Again, ballpark estimated numbers, not set in stone. So don't rake me over the coals telling me that's not how it is or that's not how it works. I know that's not how it works. I'm just explaining to you the basic math I'm using to give you an idea. That's all. Information doesn't hurt, depending on how you use it. Now, with that said, in the census, we can say without a doubt that as of right now, there are only 17 copies of this. There are 998s and 896s, and that's it for our Thunderbolts color version of this Phil Noto cover. And I say that because you'll see in a second why. As far as the last 3 months go, for this particular cover, I didn't find any sales. So unfortunately, no sales, nobody buying this book. I've been looking for this one for a while, hoping to stumble across it for cheap, but have not been lucky. I'm pretty sure I've even covered this on an earlier show, but it's been years that I've been doing this show now. So if I do any retreads at this point, I don't think it's that big a deal because we're talking about a couple of years. The market changes. So we'll see where it is now. With that said, if you wanted to look right now, well, guess what? You're in luck as we have a pair of options for you. Only a pair, but a pair nonetheless. We got a raw that's asking 150, and we have a 9.6 that's looking for $600. So neither of them are cheap. Both of them are pretty hefty premiums on that 1-in-50 ratio. But since there are two, you can't give it that close moniker. So with that said, we're going to take this cover and we're going to remove all the color from it. We're just going to wipe it clean and give you a different version. And take a look at this one. Because this one is the Phil Noto, same artist, the same cover, same date, same everything, except this time out, this is the 1-in-100 incentive. So a bit harder to find. So you do the math, you do the numbers. Now we're looking at maybe under 300 copies for this potential cover. Granted, I prefer the color version by far. I just generally do over sketch covers, but this is the harder to find one. This is the higher ratio. So in theory, this should be the harder to find one, I should say. With that said, what's in the census for the 1-in-100? Well, we had 17 for the color version. We have 19 for the sketch cover. We have 11 9.8s, 4 9.6s, and 4 9.4s, and then that's it. So a couple more in the census for this one. Well, is it because it's easier to find? Is it because it's easier to grade? It's because of the higher ratio? Whatever the case, it's still only 2 more than the last book. However, when I went to look for sales, I didn't find any. So at least as far as eBay goes, there have been no copies sold the last 3 months for this particular book. And when I went shopping for one to see what I could find if I wanted to buy it, well, I did get lucky in the fact that I found one, but I only found one. And this one copy was only looking for a little bit hair over the ratio mark at $115. I still like the color version better. And I think it's not a surprise that the color version is asking more money than this. Because I think it's a better look. It catches your eye more. But that's, personal preference. But considering there is only one out there, I told you what the rules were. So this one could get away. So with only one available, this one could get away. This one could be a ghost for this week. And with that said, that is our last option. So let's do a quick rundown on what we got here for all 4 books. Technically, I gave you 6, but for our 4 options, let's see what we got. Out of those options, 3 of them actually came up with either 1 or no copies available. So they earn that ghost moniker for this week. So that's how we're doing things. This is the makeup of the show currently. So that's what I got for you. And until next time, thank you for all the support. Thank you for taking the time to check this out. Feel free to offer me any suggestions of books you want me to take a look at down below in the comments. And like I said, I'll try to do this more on a semi-regular basis, but this is not going to be a weekly show any longer. I just don't have I've already covered hundreds of books. Like without doing retreads, it's kind of hard to keep this thing going on that kind of schedule. So maybe once a month or once every few weeks or whenever it seems reasonable to do so is when this is going to come out. So keep your eyes on the channel. More things coming your way. And once again, I'll be seeing you soon later with some more content. All right.